This conference will now be recorded.
So we will call to order this July 20th meeting of the Monterey Select Board at 6 p.m. Justin Maycook, President, Town Hall.
Susan Cooper, President, Town Hall.
And our first order of business is meeting with our new HR Director, first ever HR Director in Monterey's history, Sophia. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
We had a few specific items that we wanted to talk with you today about, but also any other questions or concerns that you think of about working in Monterey.
Okay.
Let me check.
Do you want me to? I know that there were a few ones that we.
Yeah, so the first thing that we had was a procedure for the select board requesting the human resource director's help with regard to employee interactions. So what is the best way to reach you, and how should we, members of the select board, and I guess any employees, reach you with, if something arises?
So if it is an emergency and I'm needed on site, the best way to get a hold of me is gonna be my work cell phone.
Yeah.
Do you both have that?
I don't think so.
I don't think that I do.
Okay, so let me give you that number.
Maybe I do.
We can get that
I can get it after if you don't want.
too, if we don't wanna air it out.
Gotcha, okay, I'll do that after.
We can get that, so I guess, and that's the logistical way, but I mean, can anyone just reach out to you with anything that comes up that they feel, the human resources director might be able to, or is there a process to follow to go?
Right, so because the HR function is new to everyone here, I would
Yes.
say there's probably gonna be a bit of a gray area, and I probably will be fielding a lot of questions, and maybe they're not gonna all be HR to start. A good structure to have in the future is when, at least like a personnel issue arises, or employee has a question, it's often good to direct the employee directly to their department head first.
Yeah.
And then the department head can consult with me.
Okay.
For now, and since we have a small group of employees, I would say, on the smaller side, I don't mind fielding questions directly. And I would say if it's a detailed issue, to do it via email.
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes easier to convey written. But again, cell phone or email works for me, and I'm hoping I'm gonna be available at least once a week in the town physically. Cause this is on my commute, so there's really no reason for me not to be here.
Good.
Where are you living?
Otis.
Oh, right. I
Mhm.
think you did tell me that.
So so generally, we'll try and have any employees go through their department head,
Yes.
to bring questions to you. But you said at this point, since there's a smaller number of employees, if people have questions, they can bring them to you and then you can refer them elsewhere.
Right, and I'm saying that because I'm assuming that employees really don't know to go to their department heads. We can't just assume that they're gonna know that I'm new to the town and I'm HR and they're gonna have a question. How are they gonna know to go to their department head first, unless this was already like a procedure that was in place?
Yeah, and we have policies for contacting other people who work for the town, like counsel and the accountant. And so we could, depending, if you get back to us and say, I'm overwhelmed from conflicting requests from employees, we can make a policy to try and streamline that process.
So I mean, technically speaking, we do have I'll call it a chain of command.
Yeah.
For the town, and like the highway department does answer to Jim, and if they have a problem, typically they go to Jim before they go to anyone else. Same would be true with the police department, same would be true with the library. So, I mean, at least some of those people were already operating that way.
Yeah, do you
We
think
just
it's gonna
wanted to
be-
make sure that we had a plan, so that as stuff came up, we knew how to go forward with it.
If you think it's gonna be seamless, then I don't mind either way.
Jerry, did you have a
Now,
comment?
what happens if the problem is with the department head?
Yeah, so I'd imagine in that case, you would want someone to go directly to you
Absolutely.
Yeah. if they have a problem with their direct supervisor.
And I think that's a good point he brought up is if it is of sensitive nature, then if it has to do with anything, and no matter who it is, they can always come directly to me,
Okay, email, cell phone,
yes.
okay.
So the chain of command would be void at that point.
I think, Melissa, did you send out something to all the employees saying we had a new human resources director and how to reach her?
Yeah, I only had the email at the time, I didn't have the cell phone number, but I can.
Cause I thought I remembered, so everyone is aware. And, yeah, so I guess from the select board's point of view, we would contact you the same way any other town employee would contact you, I guess unless, we needed to work with you, as the board, I guess directing or getting you to aid us in some of our human resources functions, which are still part of our job. I mean, I guess we need to work cooperatively with, how is that working in other towns, I guess? Cause you're in all 5 towns. I'm sure everyone
Probably
will be
haven't
different.
come to a head anywhere yet.
Maybe narrow that question down a little bit. In what aspect do you mean?
Yeah, so like when the select board or the town is hiring or setting a policy for time off or vacation or whatever it may be, we're reaching out to you in a different way than an employee who has a human resource concern because something their direct supervisor did.
Okay,
So we are reaching out to you, to set human resource policy for the town. And I guess it's just a little bit different, so does that
But
make
I would
sense?
imagine if we're trying to set policy, it isn't an emergent situation, so we have a chance to draft something and then send it to her for her feedback. Or even in advance of trying to draft something, saying, hey, we're getting ready to draft this. Is there a starting point we should work from, or, do you have a particular example from another town you think is excellent, or what have you?
okay, so I think that if we wanna have a standing meeting, maybe monthly, that might help this concern.
Okay.
But again, if it's an emergency, cell phone is the way to go. I don't mind text messages, just as I sort out my varying schedule, whatever town I'm working on in the moment takes precedence.
Yeah.
In terms of that, but again, if it is like, I need you on site now, things are unfolding, I can get there as soon as I can. And in terms of other towns, what I've been finding is I'm talking to folks and they're telling me, oh, I do this, I do that, or I usually head up recruitment or offers or something, and I'm like, that's HR, you can give that to me. From now on, I've already sat in on some interviews for New Marlboro. I'm taking stuff from Amy and GB, who's been fronting recruitment that direction. So I'm already controlling things that were on other people's plates. Does that kind of answer your question?
And actually, we're currently in the process of looking for a select board secretary.
Okay.
So how would, at present, I think we only have 2 applicants, but how would you recommend that I think the way it's been working is if we wanna set up interviews, Melissa's been reaching out to them to get interviews, we haven't actually interviewed them yet. But do you have any suggestions for how we might alter that process? I mean, we only have you for 6 hours, so.
Right.
Right.
So I'm wary of taking it on altogether.
Me too.
My typical recruitment process is that, well, obviously directing things behind the scenes, and it starts with the job description, posting that on whatever platforms are necessary depending on the job. It's more of a certified job that has certain licenses, you really wanna go for Indeed or LinkedIn. If it's something more entry level, Indeed does the job just fine, for the most part. I'm speaking not on a municipality level though, so I'm sure there's gonna be some intricacies to this. And then from there, I vet just based on resumes and what I'm receiving. Then pre-screen, which is a phone screen, just to like rule out very basic, like no-go things like, can you lift 50 pounds, or can you stand for long periods of time, or something that rules out a position for somebody who cannot do those things. And from there, then I bring people in for an in-person meeting. What I've been finding with the towns is that we're not very into second meetings, so I would try to incorporate maybe 3 people to sit in at most, because it can be kind of overwhelming depending on the position. And then if a second meeting is needed with somebody else, maybe if there's like a tiebreaker and we really can't decide between somebody, then that would be necessary. Then a contingent appointment letter based on what we do as a preliminary measures. I don't know if we do drug screening and quarry checks and all that fun stuff, but those would be contingent measures. And then
Has the town
official
been doing
offer.
quarry checks?
The police department probably does, but we don't for normal positions.
Right, so those are those details that I would definitely be learning along the way.
Do we have a requirement to do so?
The police department may, but.
Well, I bet they do. I would imagine they do, but yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of got carried away, so where were we?
So I think when it comes to, when people come to you with concerns, anyone can reach out to you. And at some point, it may be to the point where people should bring their concerns to the department head unless it's sensitive and they'll go directly to you.
Mhm.
But from the other side of things, as to, the board setting policies for the employees, we will try and work together as a select board so that we're not confusing you.
Mhm.
And we can only act as a board, individually, we have no power. So, and that's not something you need to be monitoring, we'll monitor ourselves. But if we have questions about, we're working on the sexual harassment policy, we're working on that as a board and we're seeking your
Mhm.
advice and help on that,
Which I believe she gave us already.
so.
As I go through the handbook, I can kind of send off sections or policies that I've reviewed and updated, and then we can just take it bit by bit until
Okay.
we're done with the whole thing.
That
I
would
think
be
that's
good.
probably the best
That
way.
was great.
And I'm also working simultaneously on other handbooks, so that can only really help my efforts as I go through, and a lot of the policies should be standard, so.
Yeah.
'Cause it's like legal wording and things like that, so.
The vacation policies and the, makeup time policies, do we want to wait on, I mean, it's come up several times recently and been an issue, so it's at the forefront of our minds. I don't know if because it has, it's something we need to address out of order, or do we wait and let it be part of the overall review? And I can see advantages to both, so.
Yeah. So what would you think about that, the time off policy and the vacation policy? That's in the handbook, which it sounds like you're gonna go through and,
Right, I haven't been able to read it yet.
okay,
If we think something keeps coming up and it's pertinent to change right now, I would say then so it's easier to have somebody sign one huge document than it is to keep signing little policies along the way, so obviously my preference is to amend the whole handbook and then just have everybody on board for that. But again, if something comes up and we're like, this can't wait, we need to kind of do this now, then we can just draft up the policy and then we'll just have to have them sign for that specific one.
I mean,
Okay.
technically, we have a policy, it's just, it's not clear that it routinely gets followed and there are awkward parts of it.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
we'll have to have everyone sign for it, that's the other thing, it has to be consistency.
And that was like the sexual harassment policy, we had one,
Mm-hmm.
but our council, took a look at it and said that we should move towards a more standard
Yeah, we should,
policy.
it is, it needs to be, there's so many legally binding things about it, it should be standard.
So what do you wanna do about those two things?
Where are we at with the sexual harassment policy? I know,
Well, we had to.
Yeah, I gave you the one with the track changes, but I think you guys were both okay with it, you just wanted Sophia to look at it.
Correct.
Yeah.
She just wanted me to add her phone number and, she could with it, so I can print you a clean copy if you want, you can accept it and then.
That works for me.
yeah, I mean, no, that sounds good.
And so, like, the vacation thing, I think currently has some issues in that we have a policy. But the way we're doing it is we didn't, in order to try to protect the employees, we're not reviewing those requests. They're supposed to be made a month in advance, except of course they aren't always. We're not reviewing them in public meeting in order to protect the privacy of the people, but that means we each individually have to look at them because otherwise we'd be a quorum if we're in there together and we can't actually discuss it. So when questions come up or people are making last minute requests, I felt recently in one case a little bit awkward about it because I felt like I was compelled to do it and yet I'm sort of like, I don't really believe this had to be last minute. And, the person wanted to make up the time. And we actually have a policy that says part-time workers can't make up time. But we allowed that to occur also, and I felt like it was an awkward thing, because I was actually violating our own policy by doing those things, and yet I felt compelled to do it because I knew we can have a conversation about it. So I don't want that to keep happening, right, because it was not a comfortable thing. But I'm not sure what to do about it.
Yeah, I think we need standard, easy to follow policies. Is that something that you are taking on in other towns, approving time off requests, or no?
Not yet, it'll come up eventually, but a lot of the departments that I'm familiar with right now, like the department head is doing the okaying of that.
And what
It's a
about the
different
department head?
It's a different structure, so it's really hard to compare, they're not going through the select board to do it.
It's TAs that are, if the department head gets time off, who okays that?
I believe, so for GB, I know it's the town manager,
Right, okay, that's what I figured.
right? And it hasn't come up in like New Marlboro or West Stockbridge yet. I can only really compare GB.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think those are the types of policies, I don't know, I imagine some of them are not standard at this point too.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd like to update them and make them standard and
Mhm.
fair and consistent. And then be able to follow them.
Mm-hmm. For PTO, it's more on the organization preference side of things. It's not like a discrimination policy that has to really note very standard things. PTO is up to us.
What's the O part?
Oh,
Paid
paid
time
time off.
Oh, okay, paid time. Okay.
And I'm finding it even varies based on municipalities, which is interesting too, so.
Okay.
But yeah, we can come up with something that's easy
So
to follow.
when parts of our employee handbook come up with something like that, where you're not just updating it to the national legal standard or the state's legal standard, will you just leave it blank and say, what would you like to do here and ask us? Or will you just look at our existing policies and try and, with something like paid time off that you say is discretionary, how will we decide that? Just when we go to approve the handbook?
Yeah, there are gonna be things that I'm gonna look at, and it's gonna be the group's opinion, not my own.
Yeah.
So I can give us options.
Okay,
I can tell you what other towns are doing.
yes,
I can tell you what my experience has shown me,
Yeah.
what seems to work the most easy. We can kind of decide from there.
great, thank you. Are there any other specific questions that you have or that we have?
So, where does that leave us with the vacation and makeup time issue? Are we just gonna table it and wait till it becomes part of the process? I mean, technically, we have a system, it's just, I think there's some hitches in the system.
Yeah, and I
But if
think,
it's been functioning this long, it can wait a little bit longer.
yeah, how long do you think it's going to take? Do you have any timeline on the employee handbook?
I do not, at this time, I do not. Depending on how gray the wording is right now, we can hold the person accountable based on what you're telling me, because it went directly against the policy already. And if they've already signed off on the current handbook, we can still hold them to that.
We could have, had we not given them permission.
We should probably not do that in the future.
Yeah, so I mean, that, it would help to come up, and I'm sure you're working on this in other towns. It would help to come up with a procedure for approving, as you go through the employee handbook, if that's something you could just star and try and figure out what's the best way to approve paid time off and or makeup time. And I know every department is a little bit different, in that regard, but how can we make a policy that's consistent, and up to date, and also just works for the organization?
Well, do we have any kind of like written submission form for?
Yes.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think all of the employees submit it for approval by the department head, the select board, and if it's a department head, the town administrator, approval. So that's what we've been going off of.
And has it been working so far?
Well, there's complications, like Susan said, where if the policy says we need to get it so far in advance and we don't get it in advance, or the policy says, there's not makeup time, but, each department functions differently. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense to make up time and other times it doesn't, like at the transfer station, when the transfer station's open, the employees are working, if it's not open, there's no work to be done. Whereas in another department, if it's an independent, someone where the position, the employee does a lot of independent work without, not public facing, it might make, their vacation on Monday, but they can easily do that work on Tuesday, but it varies greatly by department. So I don't know how we write that into a vacation policy and what standard.
So right now it's based on part-time versus full-time.
We could just send you, I guess we should just send you the
Yeah.
current policy and then you could maybe take a look at it if you like.
Right,
Because
that
the
might be
policy's
easier.
in the employee handbook, but
Yeah.
then in addition to that, there's a form.
Yes,
Yeah, we find a happy medium and we add a contingency if necessary, or we add specifics, we get specific
okay,
if it really is that, if it varies that much.
okay, and what we'll do is we'll send that to you and if you could work on that before the rest of the employee handbook, does that work for you?
Yeah.
We could do that kind of.
I know it's out of order, but it's something that
Okay.
keeps kicking us in the butt, so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say keeps, but has recently.
Okay.
Okay,
That's all I have.
that's all you have. Do you have any other questions?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
If we feel we want like a standing meeting monthly, we should, I do not mind booking out months in advance, just a reoccurring event sounds good to me.
okay, alright.
She was looking for your permission to contact counsel.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
sorry, thank you.
About was it about the sexual harassment policy?
It was kind of about both of the situations that arose, so.
The
Okay.
timesheets and the hours that were submitted.
Okay, So, Susan, are you all right with,
I'm absolutely
Sophia.
alright, I think it's a good idea.
okay, yeah, so you can, contact town council about this.
And this is typically how I would go about initiating contact with council.
No, we're in the process of putting together a form, hopefully this evening, which we will have, that's just to be filled out. And it will be a little bit more straightforward. What do you wanna contact council about? In your case, it may be confidential, so you just have to write that it's confidential. This is kind of atypical because we're in between.
Now, what if it, is an emergency and time sensitive?
If it's time sensitive, there's somewhere to mark that right on the form, and you'll just email the liaison, which is me, which is the chair of the select board. And I would sign off on it, if it's time sensitive.
What kind of turnaround is that?
We're deciding right now, but maybe 24 hours, maybe 48 hours.
If it's time sensitive, it probably needs to be more on the 24, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna assume the worst either, but
Yeah.
like, maybe I'll just call you both if it's really something that's widely.
Yeah, and I mean, and the other side of that point is when you get a response back from council, and generally, she's new to Monterey, Donna Brewer is. And she's pretty responsive, but if it's so time sensitive, it needs to happen in 1 hour, there's no guarantee we get a response from Donna, and
Right.
so.
But we don't wanna put, if we take 48 hours and she takes 48 hours, that could be a long lag.
Yeah,
And I think really, if it were emergent, the thing to do would be to call, Justin, because Justin's the liaison. So if it's that emergent and Justin thinks you need to do it, I'm gonna be like, yes, she needs to do it.
and I check my email pretty regularly too.
Okay. And when you both have my phone numbers, if you wanna text me, I have yours.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
I will make a point of texting you after the meeting, once I have your phone number, so you have mine.
Okay.
Alright, thank you very much.
Alright, I will be here tomorrow.
Moment,
Question.
Justin, can I speak?
Don Coburn?
Hello.
Yeah. Melissa had asked me to check in to see how the sound was working, and it started out terrific, and the sound is still good for you. I'm hearing echoes, but something happened with the film. So for the first 15 minutes, you were like perfectly clear, and I could see you well. Now it's like a sepia print.
The sunlight's coming through the
And,
window. The sunlight's coming through the
you took
window.
the sunlight out.
There's no shade at the moment.
Well, I think it might be a problem with the camera. You might want to check. But thanks for improving the sound.
Okay, yeah, Susan and Melissa working that, right? The sound. Melissa, thank you. Alright, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, nice to meet you, Justin.
Yes, thank
Nice to
you,
meet you as well.
and welcome aboard, hopefully it won't be too onerous.
Very happy.
I will, see you tomorrow.
Are you guys going to approve the sexual harassment policy now before you?
Yeah, so the one change from last time being that the phone number of Sophia.
Is the only difference the
Phone number, yep.
So that's a cell phone, is that a Great Barrington cell phone? It's a Monterey cell phone. Okay,
But
that's
all
good.
the towns are using it.
Our
but
cell
she's separating it.
So,
Since it's a shared position.
okay,
She has separate emails for each town.
but she has one, so, okay. And,
if we made her carry,
Because
can you imagine she'd have to carry 6 phones?
no, yeah.
Just figuring out which one was ringing would be, that was 6 separate ringtones.
That's right at the home.
I can't even.
Alright,
Are Are we signing one or both?
You don't have to. No, you don't have to sign anything, you just accept it.
Short and sweet.
So, do you have any questions, or are you ready to approve it?
I'm ready to approve it. I mean, I went over it with a fine tooth comb originally,
Yeah.
so.
I would motion to approve the new sexual harassment policy for the town.
Second,
Any further discussion or public comment? There being none, I'll call a vote. Susan?
yes.
Justin, yes, motion carries. So we've approved that. We can initial the top. Okay, so that settles our 6 PM meeting with Sophia. We have for 7 PM discussion of maintenance of the ballpark.
Right.
But I see that Ira and Gerry are here right
Yeah,
now.
Tom is on, Tom's supposed to be,
Is Tom on his way?
yes.
If there's other people that we're expecting, we can wait. But I'm also happy to discuss.
Sorry, anytime you want.
What do you guys, are you ready right now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so my general understanding is that the ballpark right behind town hall, the grass is growing in on the dirt paths and it needs a lot of an overhaul. Is that the case?
Correct. And we asked Ira, did you get a chance to bring in an estimate from the?
Yeah, I have a
Okay,
3-minute presentation.
okay, well,
Okay.
go ahead then.
Yeah, do you wanna go ahead? You can sit up here, you can sit there.
I'll sit down. Good evening, everybody. So this Sunday morning pickup game is a very informal game. It's been going on for more than 50 years. I've been a homeowner here for 36 years, which is more than half of my lifetime. And I've been playing in this game almost every week. We play from mid-May to mid-October, so that's about 5 months. And we actually played straight through COVID and everything, and had very nice turnouts. We ran ads in the Monterey News, and Steve Moore was nice enough years ago to get some of the newspapers, the surrounding newspapers, to also run the ad. And we actually have more players now than we have had in many years. The last few weeks, we've had turnouts of 28, 30 people. And you should know that the people that play in this game are anywhere from 8 years old to mid-70s. And in between innings, we even let 5, 6-year-old kids swing. They love it. I can't tell you how many kids have been attracted to the game over the years, playing with their fathers or even their grandfathers. The Valianos family, there's been 3 generations out on that field many times. Steve Aronson's family, 3 generations. There's men, women playing, and it's a very friendly pickup game. A few times a year over the last decade, we've been playing more competitive games, either here or away, with a team from Copiague and a team from Lakeville, Connecticut. So that's been a lot of fun because it's giving people a chance to, be like in high school or college again, or summer camp, intercamp games. And there's just a lot of support for the game, a lot of support. And oddly enough, and I don't mean to be picky about this, but after all the money that we spent on that basketball court and putting up that fence, which to me is a disgrace, they only have like 4 or 5 people down there on Sundays now. So I really think the field has been totally neglected. And in a sense, I blame myself because I went to other people, thinking that this one was going to take care of it. There was a select person years ago who actually played in the game a decade before that. And after twisting his arm, he finally came down to the field after 4 or 5 weeks of twisting his arm, came down to the field, looked around for 5 minutes, didn't say hello to me or anybody else, left, and nothing happened. So that was very discouraging. We needed bases years ago, and one of our players just went out and bought the bases, spent his own money, bought the bases, installed the bases. We've always taken care of the field. That's one thing that you guys should know. We used to have a big pile of dirt, excess dirt. So when home plate needed it, or the pitcher's mound needed it, we'd get shovels and throw the dirt down and rake it and fix it. One of our players used to drag the field. There's what I don't know what it's called, but something that he used to drag the field. And he did that before every game Sunday, but you can't even do it now because there's no dirt there. The dirt part of the field is an inch or two below the grass part of the field. And that's a real problem. And there's some pebbles, there's some rocks. Oddly enough, there's around the home plate area, there's a lot of moss, and it's very slippery. We actually had a player last year, cross home plate, keep going and slip, and almost hit his head on the fence. Luckily, he didn't. That's because the dirt mix that was used the last time around, and I think it was done by Gary O'Brien, who, by the way, does a very nice job of mowing the field. That's not a problem. But the dirt mix that was used was all wrong. It was pebbles. I don't know whether it was too much sand or too much clay. I would say around home plate, it was too much clay. On the mound, there's too much clay. And the fields, it was too much sand. So it's been many years. When Leroy Thorpe was the Parks Commissioner, I think he passed around a dozen years ago. When Leroy was the Parks Commissioner, he used to come down on Sundays. And he'd watch the game. He used to play in the game going way back. With Don Amstead going way back. And he always took care of the field. He made sure the field was taken care of. But it's been many years since any attention has been given to it. Now, I think we have an advocate in this fellow Tom. I haven't met him.
I'm right here.
Because I had texted him or emailed him, and I told him I was out of town and I needed to get some pictures and measurements up to the gentleman I'm gonna talk to you about in a minute. About a half an hour later, he sent me like a bunch of pictures and he took measurements between the bases, the whole thing, everything that was needed to make a quote. So for the first time, I really felt like I had an advocate, and it's actually a good feeling. So as far as somebody to take care of the field, my brother owned a summer camp up in Hinsdale up until a few years ago. And when he bought that camp with partners, I went up to see it, and their fields were terrible. They had two fields, a softball field and baseball. And they hired a fella named Dave Duquette. Dave is the brother of Dan Duquette, who I'm sure you know. You're a Red Sox fan. He was a GM for the Red Sox, the Expos, and the Orioles. And Dan Duquette owns a sports academy in Hinsdale, with about 100-acre sports academy. And his brother, Dave, takes care of all the fields. Anyway, I sent Dave the pictures and the measurements that Tom had supplied us with. And he came back and he said that he would supply 2 loads of sand clay infield mix. I don't know what that is, but he does because he's a pro. He knows exactly what's needed. He said he would York rake, power rake, and rototill it into the infield, measure out all the bases, make sure they're in the right places, because we kind of did it, just by eye. And leave us a pile of dirt that we could use for the next 3-4 years, to fill in and rake and whatever. And he supplied me with a quote of $6,000 to $8,000. Now, these contractors, I don't have to tell you guys, they're sometimes very hard to get a hold of. I must have emailed him and texted him like 3 or 4 times in the last 5 days to try to get more specifics about certain timing and everything. Finally, I just called him today and he picked up the phone. And I said, when can you do this thing? He says, I can do it anytime. So I said, well, I'm going to go to this meeting today and I'll see what I can do about getting money. And he just laughed at me. He says, you're not going to get the money. He's always wrong. But to summarize, when this job gets done, we will take care of the field. And if you think about the quote that he gave us, it averages out over 4 or 5 years to about $1,500 a year. That's not a lot of money to fix that field. And I don't know whether either one of you has been out there looking at the field, Justin or Susan, but it's pretty miserable. And there's grass growing in the infield areas. It's just bad, very bad. So my suggestion to you guys is that this game is important to this town. The people that play in this game, they love it. They're dedicated to it. There are people from surrounding towns that come every week. Got a fellow that comes from Pittsfield every week. We have a fellow who played with us last year for the first time with his son Eli, a young kid. And this kid Eli, the first couple of weeks he came down, he couldn't stand it. And by the third week, he was saying to his father, when are we going? When are we going? And they bought a home. They bought a home over the winter. And they're playing in the game. And I don't have any doubt that one of the attractions of Monterey for this family from Boston is the game. The people that play this game, I would encourage you to come down and look. I asked Tom to come down. I don't know if he did. I didn't see him. But you should see the enthusiasm that goes on.
I'm afraid you'll get me to play.
I would. Okay, so that's my presentation.
Yeah, great.
You know, I know Jerry has been an advocate, and maybe, did you
Yeah, and I'd
preface?
just like to say a couple of things. Number one, there is a little misinformation. Most of the money for that basketball court was raised by friends of Jamie Bogdanoff.
By the way, that's not true, excuse me, because I'm one of the ones that donated the money.
I know, so did I, and I
Okay.
happen to be very good friends with Robin
Yeah, I'm friends with
and
Robin.
Chris
That
and
didn't
Greg
come
and all.
near covering,
Okay.
didn't come near covering the cost of it.
Okay, now, right now, we don't have the money right now in our budget, especially with one of the problems that we have in Bidwell Park. We're facing some big problems. What I would suggest, and I don't know if this is possible, is number one, to get a budget on the town warrant for next year.
Yeah.
Or an increase in the Parks Department budget to take care of these problems. At this particular point, we don't have $8,000 to
So-
spend on the ball field. But,
And-
I mean, I would be fine, if the town could come across with that money, I have no problem with it.
So exactly, you've identified the crux of the issue, which is that the town meeting needs to approve the funds. I think the one account that was approved at this year's town meeting that could be used on the ball field would be the Park Commission General account, which was approved for $17,800.
Right.
But that's not under the jurisdiction of the select board, that's just the Park Commission, which two of the Parks Commissioners are here.
Could I just ask, what is Bidwell Park?
Bidwell Park is across the road down that.
How many people use that park? I never heard of it, I'm here 36 years.
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, the Park Commission is elected and they have the jurisdiction over the parks, they have the budget.
Sure.
They have to decide how they wanna spend the $17,800 this year. And we can't
It's
tell them
not-
how to do
it's
it.
literally not our jurisdiction,
So it's up to these guys.
right,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
the thing is, the Parks Commission legally, and I can send you the chapter and
No, it's
verse
okay.
from MTL, has jurisdiction over all of the town parks and what Jerry's talking about is, in the storm last week, a lot of trees came out in town, I think I emailed you about this. So, and how that gets apportioned out depends on where it is, but if it's in a park, the Parks Commission is responsible for it, but the bigger question is, this has been happening for years, so I'm gonna throw it back onto the Parks Commission. You guys came to the Finance Committee and the Select Board with the budget, that's what got put on the warrant. If you've known for years that there were issues with the ball field, why wasn't it on the budget?
Well, Susan, you have to realize that we're just a year or two into representing the town on the Parks Commission.
Okay,
So it took us a while to identify the neglect that's taken place
gotcha,
in many of the parks. And although your work on the select board to keep the town running is essential, I think the condition of our parks is a reflection of the vitality and the attractiveness of the town. People drive through town, you go over to the beach, and they see things that are well cared for, and they say, wow, this is a good town, they're run well. So Jerry and I and Steve Snyder and Chris are all trying to piece this thing together as best as we can, with the curveballs that have been thrown at us, namely Bidwell Park and
no
all
one
the trees.
could have predicted
I got
that.
it looking good, $7,000 invested in it, and then the next day, June, after the fiscal year ended, it was like we didn't touch it. So, it's, I understand what you're saying, but I don't like it being thrown back at us, because, I was here saying, this field is an important part of the presentation of the town. We make sure it's been mowed, that's what the Parks Commission from my looking back in the history, has done, but an adequate baseball space needs more than just mowing. Gary O'Brien doesn't have the skills. I talked to Jim Hunt, and he said, boy, I'm gonna be hard pressed to do anything here. Maybe I could get a rototiller and make it look a little bit better.
Yeah, but you need to,
but-
dirt has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he really doesn't. He, you know, he's got his hands full, especially at this point in time. So I appreciate you saying, let's put it on the, to go to the town meeting for next year, but there's gotta be some way we can get some funds to get this thing up and running so that the rest of the ball season can take place on a field that's better than what we have.
The problem, Tom, is that we're in the same situation as the park commission, which is that we can't spend any money that's not approved at town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, you know, don't have jurisdiction over the park, so we don't have money sitting, all of the money, you know, like in the Parks Commission cases, in accounts. You know, planning board clerk, or soldiers' graves, or council on aging. We can't just take that money, and as good as a cause as it may be, I think the one account that you could legally spend from for this case would be the Parks Commission account, so either the Parks Commission is gonna have to allocate some of that, in my view, allocate some of that money towards renovating the ball field, or if it doesn't have the money in this fiscal year, it will have to unfortunately be a longer process of asking for that money at town meeting, but we don't have.
You don't have a ton of discretionary funds.
I understand.
Mickey, did you have a?
Yeah, I have a, first of all, I'm gonna say that Sunday morning ballpark thing has been going on closer to 60 years.
You're right.
Because when I first came to town, my husband was playing in that.
You're right.
And it is a great thing and a good part of the town, and it's always been, and Leroy was an unsung hero because nobody realized the work that
He
he
was great.
did for more than just that. But I had a thought on this Bidwell Park. So it's gonna cost you like $8,000 to clean up some storm damage?
Second time, we just spent that money.
So-
We spent it, and I would say the new damage matches or exceeds
Right.
that.
So can't the Parks Commission fix the ball field, and that's an emergency unforeseen. There has to be some way to get emergency funds to clean up Bidwell Park. In other words, change who's asking for what.
And so we're 1 week ahead of us, Mickey. We are gonna be discussing tree damage and
How we're gonna pay
what's
for
going to
it.
be done and how it's going to be paid for next week. But that could be part of the equation, because there's, the tree warden has a budget, and the highway department has a storm damage budget. And, you know, worst comes to worst, there's an emergency budget, but I don't know that that necessarily qualifies, we can look into it.
You know, but that would be, to me, that's the way to handle it. The Parks Commission does the ball field, and the emergency tree work gets done out of one of these other
Well,
things.
I have spoken with Jim Hunt and John Field to come up with creative ways to take care of that. And some of your suggestions are exactly what we were talking about. Jim said maybe in the emergency fund for storm damage, we can come up with some money here and there. So that remains to be seen, but we'll pursue that for sure and try to open up some cash so we can address what Ira's here.
Yeah, I really do think keeping the ball field up is, I was gonna get down here earlier today, but I got involved in some other things and I really wanted to take a look at it myself. But I will at some point.
Let's put it this way, you got
Yeah,
things
and,
growing about this high in the
Yeah.
infield.
yeah,
But
Meanwhile,
the problem
Jerry.
is, every year we may run into these problems at Bidwell Park. And the
Or
select
elsewhere.
board and the town maintenance is gonna have to come by with a solution to these kind of problems that should not come under the Parks Department budget. If a tree fell on town hall, or can't say, well, the Parks Department has to take that tree down. The town has an emergency fund that takes care of these trees that come down. Just because a tree falls in one of our parks, or a tree fell on the public beach, we shouldn't be responsible to take care of unforeseen emergencies. And if we didn't have these, if we didn't have to spend $8,000 to $9,000 on Bidwell Park in the spring, we would have had money to fix the ball field, but we had to fix what was a safety hazard. And that's another thing. We can't just let trees lay in Bidwell Park, they're safety hazards. They're inviting nuisances. Somebody gets hurt down there, they're gonna sue the town. So that shouldn't come under our responsibility, that should be under storm damage.
Okay, Melissa,
So I just wanna clarify, because the word emergency's been thrown around a lot, we don't have an emergency fund. Jim has a storm damage fund that is for road washouts, trees coming down and stuff like that, and the damage that happened on, Wellman Road is going to wipe him clear of that. So any.
And then some, I think.
And then some, yes, so the damage that was, I can't remember what the two places he asked for money for, but with Bidwell Road and the other spot, he has blockaded off,
Bidwell Park.
Bidwell Park, so nobody should be going down there, there shouldn't be any liability to the town because it is blocked off. But it's going to require, you have three options, you can use your ARPA monies, you can go to town meeting and use stabilization funds, or you can go to town meeting and use free cash if it's been certified. Those are your three options for finding any more money.
And we have to, that's on the agenda for next week, so we'll get into the tree discussion, we were gonna do it this week, but we had a scheduling conflict.
We understand, so we're just asking you if something could be done where we could divert our money to fix the ball field.
Well, I tend to agree with you, Jerry, it's a shame that the $17,800 should be spent on movie nights and fixing the ball field and stuff at the town beach, and to have down trees wipe it all out is a sad thing to happen. I don't know what we can do that, we have to figure out legally what money should be spent where for the storm damage cleanup. We're in the middle of figuring that out for the community center property, the Bidwell Park. The stuff on the roads we had to do because it's, a real emergency. But we are gonna be figuring out the tree stuff next week, and we'll get back to the park commission. We can invite the Parks Commission to that discussion next week. I think the
I seem to
community,
spend every Wednesday here anyway, so
Why
it's all
not?
right.
We're gonna go on Wednesday nights.
but I mean, as far as the ball field, we don't directly have any funds to offer for the ball field. That would be all Parks Commission, but we'll see what we can do with the tree work that came as the result of it.
Should I ask you a question?
Yeah, Ira.
If I understand it correctly, the budget is like a July 1st budget?
It begins on July 1st.
Yeah, so that would mean that if there's no money this year.
Yeah.
Then we would have to wait until July 1st to get the money, and then first do the job sometime in July, of next year.
Yes.
I think that's a joke.
Yeah,
I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's how town meeting operates, there's no way around it. You do have the Park Commission account, which has almost $18,000, or started with almost $18,000. But we don't have control over that, that's the Park Commission.
I just want to say that I think it would be absurd, to wait until next July to take care of it.
It's just Massachusetts municipal government.
No, I understand.
And the reality is that you can't spend money you don't have.
No, my appeal would be to the Parks Department to divert some of the funds that they have and fix the field
And hopefully to make sure to plan to set aside money each year for
That will
property
happen in the
maintenance and
future.
to make sure that goes into the budget so they have it to spend.
Well, we have certain projects that right now we have to pay for. Certain projects that have already been started that have to be paid for, that go into the thousands of dollars. We removed that monument that was an eyesore in the middle of the town beach. And and it was a safety hazard, and we're in the process of putting a new monument in that monument, which is gonna cost anywhere from $2,000 to $2,500 to move that monument into a safe place and save a historic monument in the town. We have a movie night that's coming up for the people of Monterey, which is gonna run us at least $1,500. So now if we spend $9,000 to remove trees, and then there's another $4,000 or $5,000, where do we get $8,000 for the park, for the playground, for the ball field?
So we'll discuss, like I said, we're figuring out the tree situation next week, and we'll have to figure it out.
All right, be in touch
The
with us.
trees we
And
can
we're-
figure out
We're willing
just-
to work with, we're not trying to be, that we don't wanna address it.
Yeah.
But
And
we
we
keep
don't,
coming up with,
we aren't either, like,
I
I would
understand.
love to, if I wish that we had the money, we could just say, here, fix it. right? But realistically, there was a budget that was made, that was passed, and we have to live with the budget too.
Yeah,
And,
we understand.
no one expected 70 grand worth of tree work. And it's gotta come from a pocket that, we have to figure out what pocket it's gonna come from. Because like it or not, the trees have to be cleaned up. And, just go around holding your fingers crossed that we don't get another one, which we might well have.
Yeah.
Like, this could be the new normal, and we could be having to think about setting aside 100 grand every year for storm damage instead of 17.5. I hope not. But the weather is definitely out of my hands.
So your recommendation, both Susan and Justin, is for us to appear next week when the discussion of storm damage funds is allocated?
Yeah, so we're figuring out what tree work is going to be done at Bidwell Park, which would be under the jurisdiction of the Park Commission, and the community center, what tree work's going to be done and how it's going to be paid for. From the damage from the storm, and potentially at the community center, proactive work to prevent trees from continuing to fall down during each storm. We were going to, like I said, have that discussion this week, but we had a scheduling conflict. But we will be figuring that out next week. And that may affect greatly your budget, depending on if the Park Commission is doing the tree work down there.
Right.
Or if the money is coming from somewhere else. I don't know, we'll have to figure that out next week. But I do wanna say, I appreciate that the Park Commission has recently been very active and doing a lot of services for the town. And I think that's part of the reason why the budget is now getting used up in ways that it wasn't a few years ago. So I do appreciate the movie night and other things that the Park Commission is doing. It's unfortunate that now we're running up against the budget, but it's partly because of the tree stuff. But we can always think about, if the Park Commission continues to be active and find ways to involve the community in the parks and maintain the parks, while raising that budget for town meeting next year, which I know it seems like a far way off.
Yeah, if I wasn't clear enough, I just wanna reiterate that this is the first time the Park Commission really showed an interest in the field, and I appreciate that.
Could you
Because
get,
in the past, they just did not care.
could you get this guy to come and do some sort of remediation on the field that might help us satisfy you for the end of the season, so we can make sure it gets done in the
But he's up
next
in
season?
Hinsdale, okay,
Oh,
so he's not gonna come down.
he's not gonna come.
I mean, listen, if you wanna have Gary O'Brien roto-till the field, that'll get rid of the grass, I suppose. But the field needs dirt, needs what's called infield mix.
Yeah.
And it needs a lot of it, because it's about 2 inches below grade.
And like Tom said, Gary doesn't have the skill, and I don't even know if he has the manpower.
Well, he did a terrible job last time. That
Yeah, so-
sure. He used the wrong dirt.
It's a mixture of sand and clay.
It is, yes.
from what I understand.
Yeah, but it's a sophisticated.
But I just want you to understand, it's not that we don't wanna do it,
And it's
if
not that we
if
don't
Tom
want
and I
you to
and
do it.
everybody else could just say, here's $8,000.
Well, I just don't
We're
know.
responsible for a lot of different projects in this town,
Yeah, I
and
get it.
other people also come to us and say, we have a public beach, did you drive the public beach?
Okay, so I should have come to you
No.
years ago. That's
See,
my.
let me ask you a question, did you drive by the public beach today?
I walk by the public.
Okay.
Why?
There wasn't a parking space available. It
I
was
live across the
so-
street from you.
I know you live, it was so used. So we have to spend money to keep that beach safe and beautiful for the town. So if you're talking about how many people use it on any given day,
By the way, I'd like to tell
there's
you that
30
there's people,
people at that
there's
beach.
people from all over the Berkshires that come
We're
there.
addressing that
And
problem.
And years ago, when I first moved to this town, you had to have a parking space.
We're addressing that problem right now with the town attorney, so we are working on it. We just want you to know.
I want you to know the Red Lion Inn used to tell people to come.
We know that. I'm here 39 years. We understand that. Tom's here 50 years, his family, at least,
About
right?
70.
70 years. But we are addressing the parking problem, I want you to know. We're with the attorneys in the town, so we're not letting it go. We understand the problem.
Okay,
But
so
we
I think,
appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time and doing this.
yeah, so it's clear, I hope there's some more clarity on the issue for everybody involved about how to proceed forward. I think really the only account it can come out of is Parks
Yeah,
Commission.
we understand that.
We can we're gonna figure out how to pay for the trees, and that may greatly affect the Park Commission budget going forward. And we all know the way to raise that money, if we want more money, would be during the budgeting season in the spring.
I just wanna say two more things.
Yeah, sorry.
And I'm done. If we wait until next July to get this thing done, that means almost half the season of next year will be played with the field under the condition that it's in. That's number one. And number two, I can almost guarantee you that if I go back to this guy next year, the price is gonna be higher than it is now. I can almost guarantee it. That's it, that's all that is.
Alright, so,
Thank you.
We'd love to wave a wand and have the money, but we don't have the money, and we only get to ask for money once a year, so. I mean, I suppose if the Parks Commission, the Parks Commission could maybe make a proposal to, if there's a special town meeting, to ask for an article to raise money specifically for that project, so that you'd have it in time for next spring. That's the only other thing I can think of.
Well, that's a big if. Is there gonna be a special town meeting? For that
I,
to be done?
I can't speak for the whole board, but I think special town meetings are usually for unforeseen or emergency circumstances. And while unfortunately the right people weren't aware of what needed to be done at the ball field, it wasn't unforeseen back in May and March when we were working on the town meeting warrant and signing it.
But once there is a special town meeting, you can put other things on there, because it certainly happened in the past.
It has, I don't agree with it,
Okay.
but I'm only one member of the board.
Special town meetings aren't for.
They're supposed to be special, they're not just for regular.
Yeah, they're usually for, I think, for emergency or
Yeah.
really unforeseen things that we didn't know at the time of
Yeah.
the warrant and the town meeting. But thank you for joining us. We'll be discussing trees next week. We'll invite the park commission, or at least some of its members, given the relationship to Bidwell Park. And then that will, you can figure out what your budget is from there. But thank you for joining us.
Got it.
Thank you.
You wanna go walk?
Yeah, I've been here 36 years on it.
It's behind you. It's
So-
actually-
What do we have to town council contact for?
What's that?
Are we up to town council?
Yes, we are, our next item is old business town council contact form and policy.
Yeah, thank you.
Alright, while you review that, I think red is me. And, yeah, red is me. I'm going to grab a glass of water and I'll be right back, go for it. And by glass, I mean plastic cup.
I'll take a coffee cup.
Oh, that's fine, thank you.
I'm confused, why is this start halfway down the page 3? The form part of it.
I guess is there's either a page break in there or.
Okay. These things happen, it wasn't intentional, in other words.
Yeah, so somebody did enter a bunch of times.
So who's red?
So blue is Justin, well, it's coming up blue on here, I think it's red. Number one, whatever number one is Justin, so that color is Justin.
Okay,
And then you are purple on mine, but
I can
okay,
summarize,
SC2, got it,
I
okay,
can summarize my changes
okay.
from your draft. So I moved, as you suggested, unauthorized contact of council to the
Okay.
first bullet. What else did I do? I shortened, it sometimes said liaison to council, sometimes just said liaison, I just made it all liaison.
Okay,
I think I changed. I believe, I did a few grammatical changes. Would it be possible to get a clean copy as well?
you can, right? you want me to try to make it so that it fits on 2 pages?
Are we close?
It's hard to tell from this.
Give me just a second, I think I can.
So what happened in here, so it just ends after confidential,
Where's that?
bottom of now 4?
So we wanted to get across the point that if it's a board, committee, or commission, they should be reviewing the question as a board, committee, or commission unless it's time sensitive.
Which is there now and totally clear, so it's just confusing because of the multiple like edits, right,
I'm
so,
gonna give you 2 clean copies right now.
okay. Yeah, okay. Why she,
I think that's the way that it should be done. It's just a grammatical thing if we need to change it. But I believe it should be he or she.
I'm okay with S/he, but I
Yeah.
find it just as weird to have she as I do find to have he if we're trying to, I
Yeah.
don't know if it's a political correctness.
Well, we're going through this.
I finally gave up and just went with the plural because,
Yeah, we're going through this weird change in the English language.
I know,
But I think that it should be singular, which they and their is not singular.
I've fought it for a long time, but have given in now.
I get confused by it, what, they, who, I just like talking about one person, now it's they.
I know.
Well, yeah, I didn't even remember that, but.
But you could do S/he, right, S/he, in which case it's both she and he.
If
I think it's a relatively.
a sticking point, I'll just go with that.
I don't really care, it's just weird to have it sometimes one and sometimes the other.
Yeah,
Right, so like,
That's another one of those.
and it's just as sexist to always write she as it is to always write he, so it's just, I do
Yeah.
think it's weird either way, and to alternate, it seems very random and somewhat confusing, but.
well, I did try not to alternate.
No, I know,
Yeah.
I changed the other one to they also.
Why don't I just read it, cause if it's possible, I would like to get it approved tonight.
Yeah,
So,
I'm just
Sophia,
reading it.
I'll just go through and then hold me if we have any questions. Whereas the town of Monterey through its select board directs and supervises the use of town council, and I'll mark it and then we can come back to it. Whereas the select board intends to identify appropriate use of town council's time with an appropriate protocol, the select board hereby adopts the following policy. Unauthorized contact of town council. Town council, hereinafter council, will respond only to the designated liaison to council or those with prior authorization as established by the procedure outlined below. Council liaison. The chair of the select board shall act as the liaison to council, hereinafter liaison. In cases where the chair is not the primary correspondent with council, the chair shall be copied on all written correspondence to and from council. Alternate council liaison. If the chair of the select board must recuse themselves, so we'll come back to that, on a matter, or fails to respond within 48-24, so we'll come back to that, hours to a confidential or time-sensitive request, the otherwise most senior member of the select board, the member whose term will expire earliest, shall act as liaison for that matter. If the liaison denies a confidential or time-sensitive request, the requester shall have the ability to make an appeal to the whole select board. Standard process for request to contact council. Department heads and chairs of multi-member bodies, boards, committees, commissions, councils, etc. may request authorization to contact council by completing the request to use legal counsel form. Unless a matter is time-sensitive or confidential, the majority of a town multi-member body shall approve the question in open session prior to asking for permission to contact council. Only department heads and chairs of multi-member bodies may request to contact council. The select board shall consider the completed form at its next regular meeting unless the completed form indicates that the request is time sensitive or confidential. Time sensitive matters. For time sensitive matters, when it would not be timely or practicable to convene the full multi-member body, the chair of a multi-member body may independently complete the request to use legal counsel form. Likewise, for time sensitive matters, the liaison shall be authorized to approve access to counsel. If the liaison authorizes such action, she, will come back to that, shall notify the select board of the same at its next meeting. Confidential matters. For matters that require the advice of counsel to be requested and or provided in confidence, liaisons shall be authorized to approve access to counsel. I'm gonna add the before.
Where, before the, or
Yeah,
before
just
council?
before liaison.
Yeah.
If the liaison authorizes such action, she, will come back to that, shall notify the select board at its next meeting. The liaison shall maintain the confidentiality of confidential requests to contact counsel. If the question was asked in confidence and would be subject to the attorney-client privilege, the liaison shall simply inform the board that a confidential request to contact counsel is approved. Confidential legal advice sought or received by town government bodies or officials should only be discussed in open session if absolutely necessary, understanding that such action will likely void the protections of the attorney-client privilege. Likewise, the select board or any government body authorized to seek advice from town council may only meet in executive session to discuss such matters as permitted by the open meeting law and in strict compliance therewith. Additional contact beyond initial request. To the extent that a town government body or official requires additional contact with or advice of counsel in connection with an approved matter or a matter incidental and related thereto, no further select board approval should be required. Nevertheless, the liaison shall be notified of any additional contact with counsel and shall be copied on any written correspondence to or from counsel. Use of special counsel, only select board may authorize use of special counsel. And then the form, we can discuss if we have any changes in the form.
I don't remember were there any changes to it?
I don't think there were.
Oh, there's, council or alternate council liaison?
Oh, yes, that was the one change.
Okay,
So we have 3 instances of herself, she, and she, which we could replace with themselves, they, and they. I'm fine with that.
okay, let's just do that, it just takes out the,
And then we have, I wanna add the in the first sentence of confidential matters before
and,
liaison.
yep, and in the 4th line, request to contact council should be capitalized, it's capitalized everywhere else.
In the 4th line.
Under confidential matters. Request to contact council. Okay.
Yep.
Did you catch
And-
that?
I got it.
Okay,
And then, that comma in the last sentence after, likewise, the select board or any government authorized to seek advice from town council may only, I don't think there needs to be a comma between council and may.
I think that would only be if there was a comment after select board, so,
Yes.
yeah, so, out goes the comma, okay.
So no comma.
And
in
then
that.
the time,
Okay, so yes, and the time is the last one. 20 or 48 or 24 hours. I'm fine with either, I put 48, I think I started with 5 days. My sense is that there's not, you don't have an urgent request to contact council like you would have an urgent need to go to the emergency room. In the sense that
You're not bleeding.
you never know if it's not like Donna is available on weekends. But
point taken.
I'm fine with 24 hours because I understand some things need to move along quickly. So 24 is fine, if that works for you.
I'm fine with it too.
Okay, so we'll do 24 there in number 3.
Alright, look at that, we got it done. Okay,
Okay, I
alright,
would, motion to approve this policy for contacting town council as amended.
second,
I'll vote yes,
yes,
and the motion carries and we approve the policy statement. Just initial that. And, alright, we are Unless you already got that first
I
thing.
got the first one.
Okay, great. Okay, the next item is select board office hours, which I had right here.
So the only thought I had was that, I think 2 hours is a long time.
Yeah.
Let's try an hour.
Yeah.
And what I was gonna say is, I'd be up for saying, like, picking, I'm making this up.
Yeah.
I do the first Saturday and you do the third Saturday or
Yeah.
something. So it's known and it's like a regular time, and let's try it for a few months, and if nobody comes, then we'll stop.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
I think, and yeah, a 1 hour, I think is reasonable. If people want to have a concern about the ball field or whatever they may have. 1 hour should be a big enough window where they can come, and yeah, I think that's fine.
I mean, if it's not, if I'm sitting there and somebody comes in 5 minutes of 11 and wants to chat, I'm not gonna leave unless
Yeah.
somewhere I gotta go.
Yeah, and if you talk a little longer than the 1 hour,
I'm not gonna leave because it's 11, I'm sorry, right? Yeah.
unless, like you say, you've got to go to a wedding or something.
Yeah, I agree, we'll see how it works, and I know it's been tried before in Monterey, and every board's a little bit different, circumstances are always different. And we
Give it a
can-
shot, if it's
we'll give it a
popular, it'll be great, and if not, then we'll start.
Alright.
Okay, so you want me to take first Saturday and you take third, or you wanna switch to that? I don't care, I
This
really,
next month's a little bit confusing.
Yeah. August, yeah.
I could, because I won't be able to do it for a few weekends, other than we have the second homeowners one until the
And
27th.
we decided to move, we're on the 13th, we're doing second homeowners, but we moved the
At
time to noon, okay.
And then other than that, in the next 2 months, I have almost no availability on Saturday, so I could even just do this July 23rd, just to get it started. Which is what, the 4th Saturday in a month of 5 Saturdays. But I'll sit in town hall and if people wanna come and ask questions or.
Okay.
We're
So
just
maybe
gonna
I'll do,
start
then maybe second?
Yeah.
And then we can do like second and fourth?
Yeah.
Okay.
That works for me, and then we'll see how it goes.
That would be the,
Except you can't do the second in August, right, cause isn't it the 13th and you're gonna.
that is true. So, we'll be doing something else on the 13th, so I guess I'd have the first one on September 10th.
Alright. Are we all set on office hours? I guess what we'll have to do is put this as a tab on the webpage. The main thing I want to be clear that's out there is that obviously is just exactly what this description says, that no official action can take place. It's a place for informal
Oh,
conversation.
did you say what time? You're gonna have 1 hour, but when?
It's
10
10 to 11.
yeah.
That's 10 to 11, okay.
So. That's all. We'll just post this on the website. And Melissa, can you please post that? I will start this Saturday, July 23rd at 10 AM to 11 AM. Thank you. That's select board office hours. Town administrator items, the treasurer contract renewal, I see it's here, and she approved the changes. And so this was all we reviewed the other week, but we're here now, I made just a change of adding one clause about termination on the town, if the town won't terminate the contract.
And she was okay with that?
She was okay with that, so I would move to approve this contract with Sarah Hunter doing business as Mass Munifin for treasurer services.
Second.
Any other further discussion or public comment? There being none, I'll call a vote. Susan?
Yes.
Justin, yes, and we sign this, and we just need one signed copy?
Yeah, I'll just scan it for her.
Okay, but this is like the good official.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a date or something. Throw a date.
It's the 20th, right?
Yeah.
We did on Friday? Okay.
So we signed that. Okay, special event permit request for the Bidwell House.
Yeah, so they are, I'm still waiting on the tips and insurance certificates, but if you, want to approve it contingent upon those.
I didn't see any problem with their application.
Yeah, I would say that we've done that before. You're waiting on the tips certificate.
The tips and the insurance with the alcohol liability certificate.
Alright, I would motion to approve the special event permit for the Bidwell House contingent upon the tips and the insurance.
A second?
Any further deliberation or public comment? There being none, call a vote. Susan?
Yes.
Justin, yes, and with that special event permit request is approved contingent upon receiving those two further items. The request for the fire company.
So I'm just waiting on the insurance certificate for that one.
Okay.
You want to do the same thing?
Alright, and I should disclose that I am a member of the fire company, but I don't foresee this special event permit request impacting my financial status, positive or negative. I would motion to approve the fire company special event permit request contingent upon receiving the insurance.
Second.
Further comment? Call a vote. Susan?
Yes.
Justin, yes. Motion carries. Special event permit request for the fire company is approved contingent upon receiving the insurance. The Southern Berkshire Ambulance Service sub-grant recipient agreement for the ARPA funds was that when we approved the ARPA funds of $17,979 to go towards Southern Berkshire Ambulance upon their request, our accountant noted that this would fall under a sub-grant recipient agreement. So Melissa and town council drafted this up, and it's already been signed by Sean of Southern Berkshire, right, Godfrey? So this is just a formality to allow us to give them $17,979 of our grant, of our ARPA funds towards the purchase of their new ambulance.
And, I looked it over, and other than the fact that ambulance is spelled wrong at the top of the document, which I just noticed. Ambulance.
It's like the headache, something you don't read.
Hang on, cause I might be able to change it.
It's in all caps, and the whole, and the both
Yeah.
lines are like super full, so I
I
just
can
like
see
glanced
that
up and I'm
from
like, wait, what?
But
I
you
missed
don't
it the
always
first
read
time.
something like that.
No,
Like
you
reading
really
the
don't.
address on something, you don't always read that. It's like, whatever, that's not.
I didn't see any other problems with it, I had no idea who had drafted it, so I had to ask Melissa, did the council get this? She's like, yeah, council got it, I'm like, okay, then.
Okay, I fixed that, so let me print the new one out.
I see you're, got a bare foot,
Sorta.
cute stockings, but.
Yeah, right, they're pressure stockings.
Yeah, oh.
I try to get the edema down. Never done with it. But he told me to get out there in non-support shoes, so I'm like, okay,
Alright,
do what I'm told.
so with that one small change, I would move that we approve the sub-grant agreement between the town of Monterey and Southern Berkshire Ambulance Service for the ARPA funds in the amount of $17,979, which we already approved for the purchase of a new ambulance for Southern Berkshire.
Second,
Any further comments? There being none, we'll call a vote. Susan?
yes.
Justin, yes, motion carries. We'll sign off on here, I think. And minutes, thank you. Yeah.
Hot off the press and cover it.
So, we're at the point of the meeting where it's correspondence, minutes, and public comment. Lori Shaw emailed us, and I emailed her back on my own, but I wanted to put on the agenda just to clarify. She's asking, or responding to applications as they come in, or after the October deadline that we set. And I told her, I'm pretty sure we agreed to review them all after the October deadline.
Yeah, that's what I responded as well, she did respond to me that they are feeling the pressure because they wanna make sure that if they get the funds, they'll be able to go ahead with the wait time and have the pavilion up and running in time for the season next year, because they can't get the tent, but I think there should be time, even with 6 months, like, it's not, they're not gonna put the pavilion up in February.
Yeah, I mean, you never know with contractors, but.
That's absolutely true.
But we set, I think, after a lot of back and forth about the ARPA funds, we did set a process, and I think that we should follow it.
I agree, and I do think that, I mean, although there are unknowns and there can always be problems, I think that even with that timeline, they should, if we approve it, they should be able to get what they want in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
And if it's a few weeks later than they would have ideally liked, I think for the process, it's still reasonable.
Yeah, and I just pulled up the website quickly to look,
Which
And
website?
the Town of Monterey
Okay.
Select Board ARPA funds. And it does actually say proposals for use of ARPA funds must be submitted by October 13th, 2022, at which point all requests will be reviewed by the select board. So we do
So she said
have,
October first, but, yeah.
I think it must have got cut off
Oh, okay,
or something.
13th, right.
But because our form is posted online as well, which also says, let me double check, it says October 13th, so it must have just cut off. So I just wanted to clarify, it's clear on the website, it's clear on the form. But I just wanted to add it so that there weren't any surprises.
Makes it fair is fair.
Yep.
Thank you for everybody.
Alright, so that's that. The next item is the tax title property. We got some answers back from the tax title attorney and or the treasurer. If we reject this offer and put it to an auction and do not get any bidders, can we turn around and then accept the buyback to the relative? Yes, we can. Can the relative who was minor at the time pay off the tax title now? Yes. Can they bid at the auction? Yes. As far as the tax possession auction, Sarah pulled the town-owned properties, requested which ones were taken through foreclosure with our tax title attorney, and she's reached out to an auctioneer to get information.
She's asking us if we wanna put money into perk tests, it looks like.
Yes. I was wondering if, now that we have the facts and answers to our question, are we ready to make a decision on this next week? As to whether to sell the property or accept the buyback from the relative or put the property to auction? Or do we have further questions? I think at the point at which we have all the information, we should make a decision, one way or the other.
Yeah, I kinda feel the same way.
I mean, I guess if there are other questions, we should just try and get them asked, and if not, I would be happy to put this on the agenda for,
I'm okay with going forward and making a decision on that one, and I'm not really sure what precedent it would set if we go either way, but I think they deserve a decision.
Yeah.
What do we wanna do about a general tax possession auction though? That seems like it requires some other information separately, but I don't think we have to consider them at the same time if we don't want to.
Yeah, it sounds like the
Property's
treasurer,
been sitting there a long time.
yeah,
a
it sounds
long
like the
time.
treasurer has reached out to get information, right? And my sense is that is that they're not incredibly valuable properties.
That's what.
Um, and we're trying to remember, what was, they were maybe gonna go to an auction before and they didn't, and I can't remember.
I think they didn't feel we had enough properties, and that was when they suggested adding the school,
Yeah,
and then that's when the historic district study committee was formed,
oh,
because they didn't want the school to go on there, and so that, I think had the board just put it on there, we would have probably moved forward with the auction. They wanted something a little more desirable on there.
yeah, and that's my sense is, yeah, it's kind of awkward, we own these properties, we're not collecting taxes on them, we're not doing anything with them. It would be nice to either sell them so that we can start collecting taxes on them again, or do something with them. But there's also probably kind of a reason why nothing has been done.
Right.
It would be good to have that information, and like you said, maybe make a policy. I think this is a particularly unique circumstance because it's a relative who was a minor at the time, who's offering to buy back the tax title property.
I mean, you know, we probably could get more for it at auction.
It's possible.
Well, right now, it seems likely, if it's a, you know, it's a buildable lot, right? It's not is there a house on it?
There is a structure.
A structure. Either way, given the current market, we would probably get more for it at auction. The question is sort of, it's a kind of unique situation. I don't think it's one that happens all that often, and it's the sort of situation, it'll sound strange, but I give him credit for wanting to come forward to do that. You know, whatever went on in the generation before, he's trying to make it right, and so.
And if it sits in our hands, you know, it's not collecting any taxes, period.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we'll give an $8,000 donation to fix the,
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think, it was about $14,000 or $15,000, if I'm not mistaken, would it just go into, we wouldn't really be able to spend it, would we?
I don't think so, I think it goes to the general fund.
Yeah.
And then it would recoup any of the costs that were spent on it.
Yeah, like legal fees.
Legal fees and the, putting in paper and.
Alright, so we'll put that on the agenda for next week.
Okay.
To attempt to make a decision. Approved minutes of 7/13/22, it looks
Do you
like,
wanna add the, Katrina's resignation, and I only ask that because if you want me to put something in the Monterey News so that it gets out there to see who's interested
yeah,
before the deadline?
why don't we add it?
What's the deadline in the Monterey News, not the
Right.
deadline for the position.
Yeah, no, since I'm gonna be, away next week and I can send it tomorrow. It's okay if you don't want to, I just thought
Yeah, why don't we just deal with it next week? I haven't really thought about it. For those, Katrina Fitzpatrick resigned from the finance committee late last night, or I saw it late last night.
Does that mean we can put that to the position, or you would appoint that?
It's an
We can
appointed,
appoint it.
it's a point
Yeah,
thing,
it
it's
doesn't
not
have to
a,
go on the ballot.
But we need some good candidates.
Who brings that?
Speaking of candidates, what's the status of the interviews for the select board secretary?
So actually, I reached out to both candidates. I got a response from Gabby Johnson, and she was actually willing to come in at noon on August 3rd. She did let me know that, how did she put it? Basically that she's not available in evenings.
That would be awkward,
So,
because
So,
the job involves.
this is
being
what I
there.
wrote to her, and
Right.
we can decide if we wanna write something different. I wrote, she wrote, I attend classes in the evening, so my availability is Monday to Friday, 7 AM to 5 PM. And I said, your work schedule may prove to be incompatible with the position, but I won't make that call on my own. So if you want me to get back to her, my sense is that it's more or less just incompatible position. If she said in this email, I am also, thank you so much for reviewing my application and reaching out to me. I am still interested and I would like to coordinate a time to meet. I am also a full-time student and I attend classes in the evening, so my availability is Monday to Friday, 7 AM to 5 PM. Please let me know if this will work with the required availability of the position, or a virtual interview, something that can be arranged.
The virtual interview is, but I think that we're pretty committed to the evening meetings,
Yeah.
so I don't.
I can get-
It's gonna be incompatible, it's too bad, she seems like she's a cool person,
Yeah.
but she has other commitments, which is a thing. that
Yeah.
happens.
So I will get back to her and tell her that I think that her schedule is incompatible with her
And the
position.
other person?
No response, I'll probably follow up email. I think the first email I sent, for some reason it's not showing, because it was like through Indeed email or something.
And
Not showing.
are we still up on Indeed, what's the situation with that? Yeah. So,
I mean, do you want me to continue putting it in the shopper's guide? 'Cause I think it's like $80 every,
what does it cost us on Indeed?
it's nothing as with the free version.
What happens if you take it down and put it back up? Do more people see it? I know that sounds like a strange thing to say, but sometimes that happens. Like you see the ones that just get posted and ones that have been posted you don't pay attention to.
I'm not familiar with the algorithm.
I don't know. I don't know the algorithm.
Neither.
It might be one of those algorithm things that no one really understands.
Possibly the designers included.
It listens to what you're saying through your
It knows
phone.
when you are
I was gonna say,
sleeping.
We'll all have something on our Facebook feed tonight, but.
Yeah.
On the radio. I'll reach out to her and let her know that that schedule is not compatible.
Okay, so we're
So
still
as long
looking
as
at
that's her schedule and this is our position, it's not
Okay.
gonna. Yeah, and we'll deal with Katrina's resignation next week,
Okay.
when we put on the agenda.
But we do need to figure out a way to, I mean, it would be good to try to get some new blood.
Exactly.
Maybe people that actually have qualifications, but just for whatever reason haven't felt like serving or known that their services might be useful. I'm not sure who to tap for that, but, and also I wanted to let you know that I did reach out to both Frank and Michelle to ask them if they would be interested in serving as the town's FC representative on the 8 towns board, and both of them said no. So, it would be a lot to ask for someone to be a new.
Do we have an opening on the 8-town board?
Well, you had mentioned a couple weeks ago, I'm sorry, don't silence that. You had mentioned a couple weeks ago, that you would like to see currently serving members
Yes.
serving. As I read the law, the moderator has a choice, the moderator is responsible for appointing them. I don't see anything in the law that wouldn't allow the moderator to appoint a new person.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, we would have to have people who were willing to serve and had a suitable background that would make their service particularly helpful.
My only concern would be with if we already have people in the
role, whether
In the
they'd be
role.
willing to step down.
Because we're limited to 3 members. And
Right, we would have to replace one.
And also, it probably, if the moderator made the appointment, the moderator would need to remove the appointed. If they didn't, I know in other towns, people are, in some cases, willingly just stepping down, resigning, because they moved or moved on. But forcefully removing someone is kind of a different story.
There is no question,
Yeah.
but, whether we would be in that position or not, it's not worth even attempting to do that if we don't have someone to serve in their stead.
Yeah, chicken or the egg, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
if somebody steps down, that's one thing that you
Right,
don't.
but of course.
But if you're trying to suggest that somebody step down, you don't wanna have it step down and not have somebody.
yes.
Exactly. I would want, if we're gonna try to put someone else forward, I'd want them to be someone, if it was a select board person, I would suggest you would be a great candidate if you were willing to do it, but if you might have enough on your plate already. I feel like I do.
Yeah.
And, there, you know, if we were talking about a currently serving finance committee member, the current two
Yeah.
aren't willing to serve,
Gotcha.
so we would have to have a new candidate.
Yes.
And I think that, you know, absent a candidate who's qualified and understands some of the issues involved, it might not benefit us.
Yeah.
Although,
So we'll think about that, and yeah, we'll deal with that next week.
Okay.
But I guess the next thing on our agenda is the minutes of 7:13.
I'll leave you to it.
Alright, thank you.
oh, I had one other communication
Yeah.
this week from someone, on Hoopi Road, who was visited by Fish and Wildlife.
Uh-huh.
I haven't had a chance to, it was yesterday that I got this communique, so I haven't had a chance to reach out to the Fish and Wildlife guy. Apparently, there's a bear in the neighborhood that has been entering homes.
Break and entry.
Yes, breaking
Breaking
and
and
entering, and, interestingly, Jennifer's, both the neighbor and across the street from her are both SDR houses, short-term rental houses. And the one directly next to her, she says that their dumpster is regularly on its side, so the bear is, got a regular route and is dealing with the garbage in the dumpster. And apparently, and I haven't myself spoken to the Fish and Wildlife person, but I will this week. According to the report, he said this is a consistent problem they're having all over with bears and short-term rentals and unattended garbage. But entering homes is an issue. So I'm not sure, I mean, it's been across the Google group that the bears entered a number of houses. I don't know that there's anything we need to do, but it's yet another concern, and of course, you know, there's other reasons bears go into people's yards. They go into garages, we now are careful with our garbage, because they broke into our garage at one point, right, it happens. So, I just wanted to,
Gotcha.
So I can take
Melissa?
you on that, the DEP is the one that, or the environmental protection is the one that handles all that, we don't get involved in that. The cops can come if the bear's there and they can shoot it with rubber bullets, try to scare it away, but, there have been 2 traps laid by environmental protection, one at John Silver's house and one at Maynard's old house.
oh yeah, it was John Silver's house that it broke into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it also broke into the Ebert's house today and it broke into Maynard's old house. They did catch a cub today, that's Brian, if you wanna see the pictures, it's not the one that's been terrorizing, but, they're gonna reset the traps tomorrow and see if they can get the big one.
Well, I was sitting in my family room one day and it walked onto my yard and it stopped in the driveway and it was looking at the door, like, and I got up and banged on the window and went, oh, okay, I'm leaving now. So, yeah, it's a pretty busy little bear, and it has figured out the ADA compatible handles. Yes, if you have
I will
one,
not
switch
put-
to the horse, switch to the knob, right,
Inside, I've got all levers.
but outside, yeah.
No. But I had left cookies cooling in the kitchen last year, and I came home from, I think it was a select board meeting, and I walked right in where there's a screen, and the screen was broken, and I'm walking into this busted screen, I thought, well, they're here, and boy, I went through that whole house very carefully, like, I didn't wanna be.
But it had left already.
It hadn't actually come in, it had just broken in
Oh,
the screen,
okay.
and then it's kind of, the screen is the window's right in a corner, so I guess it was a little awkward for me, I decided my cookies weren't that good.
Remind me not to eat your cookies.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna leave cookies out to cool when I leave, that's for sure. All right,
Alright,
good night.
have a good night. Blue is me, red is you.
Bye.
Night. think that should be then,
Where is that?
then it should be. Probably
Yeah,
then, then it should be.
yes, yeah, I agree. That next sentence on page 2, I think we both had edits to.
I love when that happens. So the one that starts on the page when Justin was concerned,
With
The
the
lack
lack
of
of
a
a
clear
clear
plan
plan
for
for the
the-
non-Everett High School building, which is fairly new and in excellent condition. And he did not want to see the building go to waste if the preferred model is carried out.
that one.
So I think the what you added, which is a building in excellent repair, is already,
Yeah, no,
Taken
you
care of.
totally did, you
So-
did it, yep. We were both on the same case. I realized after the meeting, it's actually 3 derelict buildings. Cause the Stockbridge School got made into the town hall, but then the town hall has never been repaired. Just saying.
yeah.
I'm sorry, how does this end up reading?
Yeah, what do we wanna go with, assuming the proposals were approved, or the estimated, yeah,
That's what I wasn't sure of, the estimated what? The estimated annual debt service?
they had,
Monterey
I just
Bay.
had it written, the estimated annual debt service to Monterey would be.
Last action, just enough savings. Or maybe the estimated annual debt service, Monterey's portion of the estimated annual debt service?
Yeah, that's
Still seems shocking to me, the numbers, like, I thought that number seemed surprisingly low.
Yeah.
Unbelievably low, actually. I mean, that's really what I'm saying, is that, to me, I saw that number and I'm like, they must have made a mistake, because it didn't seem likely to me. These guys, man. Where we're both doing
Yeah.
the same thing repeatedly.
Whatever you,
My brain, I read vacancies exemption, I'm like, what? I had to read it before. It's literally. How does this end up reading? There's no,
each town would then have to make the recommendation.
you have to be part of the agreement, it might be possible, so just, cause was and for are still in here, but there's
So
no
we can just
sentence.
delete those.
Yeah, okay. I did check, by the way, and according to the statute, she is correct. If the board does put forward a proposal, and gives it to us, we must put it on warrant. So it's not optional for us, which is kind of peculiar in my view, but
Yeah.
that's how it is. Okay, so anything else? So that's what I wrote, I don't know if you remember anything.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. And that should be then, right? So do we wanna just take this one? Do
Yeah.
you have anything else?
Well, there's 3 and 4, pages 3 and 4,
So there are.
but not much on them. I have no questions other than on number 7, we both made changes and we're gonna have to clear that up. Justin will follow up with the clerk to make sure that if this is the case, she could.
Provide a copy of the hours.
The copy of the hours to the town administrator posted on the website.
So I wasn't sure about posting on the website, what the hours for, like, it was unclear to me what that actually meant, that's
The
why I tried
hours
to be
of-
ordered.
The hours to accept.
That's good. The hours to accept the papers prior to the deadline?
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to get in there, posting office hours for those critical deadlines, the public knows their documents will be received, was what I came up with, but I'm flexible.
Yeah, we can go with yours. You would just like go with Susan's edits or something. And then Justin postponed further deliberations and any decisions to the next meeting as it was not on the agenda for this evening.
Yeah.
So we just suggested this.
Okay.
And then I didn't know, and then.
What's this from?
Alright, motion to approve the 7/13/2022 minutes as edited.
And there's this too, but I don't think there's any. 1, 3, 4, 5, okay. And 2, 1. Alright,
All good, all
Sure.
vote yes to
Yes.
approve, and yes from Susan, so these are approved. At 1, 3, 5. So the next item is attachments to the executive session minutes of October 4th, November 4, and November 17th, 2021. And the question is, there were documents attached to the minutes that there was an understanding may be redacted. And Donna, if I'm not mistaken, is saying that they are not redacted. Now, one thing in her response caught my eye, which was she said if they're used in an open session, then,
Right, but I think she went on later to say that once the executive session becomes approved, it's then.
well, my question, and this is a question I've had about executive session minutes for a while, is, and we talked about doing it one time and we never did it, but was approve executive session minutes in a redacted form or released to the public in a redacted form. Because the idea, my understanding is that when you hold an executive session, it's for a legal purpose. And when the legal reason for holding that executive session meeting is no longer valid, like let's say you discuss litigation strategy
and the litigation.
and the litigation is over, then you are supposed to release those executive session
I would
minutes.
think.
If you go into executive session to discuss the reputation or character of an employee, does that ever go away? I
I
mean,
would think not.
I would think it wouldn't. And I also don't know that has the board ever, we approved sets of executive session minutes, but did we ever vote to release executive session minutes?
Of those one particular ones?
Yeah. When was that? Was it Steve and I?
Actually, I think you and John approved the 10-4 ones.
Well,
Actually, Steve might not have approved any of those because he didn't agree
not
with.
approving the minutes, voting for them to be released to the
Yes.
public.
Yes.
I don't, did we vote to release them to the public, is my question.
Yes. That's where my dilemma lies.
Okay, no, I understand, I'm wondering, like, cause I remember there was a May set of executive session minutes when we agreed. I felt like they got released before we agreed.
You know what I'll do? I'm just gonna go, because you guys were writing on them and I keep
Yeah.
the drafts.
So there's this dilemma, and I want to bring it to the board rather than just make the decision on my own, and I know you weren't on the board.
So, okay,
For
we
the
got a
meetings.
series of questions, as I just thinking back over what you said. The first question is, were the minutes approved? The second question was.
I know they were approved.
They were approved.
They were approved.
Second question is.
Because we had a
did-
number of open meeting law complaints,
Right.
and we were forced to,
To.
we were
right.
derelict actually in approving them. We did
Right.
approve sets of minutes.
But you didn't release them, and then you voted to release them, I think, even though you approved
That's
them,
my-
they weren't released, and then the question we're trying to find out is, did you then later vote to release them? And the additional question is, in releasing them, do they have to be redacted, since the matter, I don't know what the exact
Yeah,
was in there, but if there is material in there that might be relevant to something still ongoing, it might be that we either have to release them redacted or not release them. Is that the upshot of the question?
yeah, I mean, my sense was that if you hold an executive session, you hold it for a reason. Once that reason expires, you release them.
The question is, did it expire?
Yeah.
So
Actually,
if-
it makes sense for me to do that. I have to go through the minutes on here, because I think you guys approved them not for distribution, and then you went back later and approved them for distribution.
I don't recall that. We can look into it. If we haven't, there's another set of minutes that we might wanna discuss. No, we did release the early May executive session minutes already, I think.
So 10-4, you went into executive session to approve them on March 2nd. So let's see what the March 2nd, I mean, this could take me a while to.
Yeah, so basically, my point is, I don't think the board ever voted, and I'm not saying it should or shouldn't, but I don't think that the board ever actually voted to release to the public these sets of minutes.
So we have to, number one, ascertain if the board did or
Yeah.
not. Number two, if they did, then what?
If executive session minutes are released to the public, then they're released to the public. It seems like you can't really redact them, is my general understanding. I remember we had to, and we spent months trying to approve some of these minutes. And we had to reach out to counsel, and I do remember approving them, because it was a big relief, but I don't, sometimes we'd say approve, but not for dissemination to the public.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying whether or not they should be released to the public, but
You're
I'm,
just trying to ascertain whether you did
Did.
vote, yeah.
obviously,
Obviously, these are before me, so I've never seen any of these minutes.
yeah,
Should, the other, this actually says attachments too. So is there an additional question about?
so the question is whether the attachments to the minutes should be attachments to the minutes, and if they're attachments to the minutes, should be that they be posted to the website along with the minutes themselves,
If the minutes are posted.
if the minutes are posted, as is our typical policy, but that's only a select board policy, not an that's only a Monterey select board policy, not an open meeting law requirement. We don't need to post the attachments, the attachments to the minutes need to be available,
But we don't need to post them.
but
I guess whether we put them up there would have to depend on what the attachments were and whether any of the material in there might still be relevant to any pending or future issues.
here's my proposal. Why don't, Melissa, you and I can look through minutes and notes and such to see if the minutes were ever officially released, or the board agreed to release them to the public?
Would that have been done in regular session or executive session?
Originally, you guys met I found 3 so far where you've met an executive session to try to approve them and did not.
Yeah, but my point being, then we can, and if you'll allow me to ask Donna, because I saw the response to Melissa for Donna. My question being, it's very simple to me, if you go into executive session for litigation strategy and the litigation or the immediate threat of litigation is over, you release the executive session minutes. If the purpose of going into executive session is purpose 1, which is what all of these meetings were, to discuss character, reputation,
Then
rather
they may
than
never
professional
expire,
competence, at what point do you release them, if ever?
Right.
And I don't know, but I would ask Donna if you will allow me to, I'll fill out this form.
I think it would be good to ask, and since I wasn't in those executive sessions, nor have I seen the minutes, it's difficult for me to comment more specifically, but I will say that were anything in those minutes to be relevant to any currently ongoing or potential immediate future litigation issues, there would also be reason to not put them out. I don't know if it's true or not, because I don't know what's in the minutes, but that would still apply.
See, when I went through the list you gave me, Justin, when you gave me that list of I had checked into everything, and I believe those were all approved.
To be released. I
To
know
be
that they're
released.
approved. I know that they're approved. I don't know if they were approved to be released.
But I will look tomorrow.
And the other fact of the matter is, if they're not approved to be released, should they be? I know we're supposed to review them. And we can do that. What I'm asking for here is,
Well, your argument would still stand, I think, all those potential could still be litigation at some point by any of the parties involved.
I don't know if that's a valid, we went into executive session for purpose 1, not litigation strategy.
No, but I mean, the character, you still could be sued for defamation of character for any of these.
Yeah, but, and I don't know, but that's why I filled
that's
out
why it's
the
worth
first
talking
ever
about,
town
right.
council form.
Oh my goodness.
And if you will agree to
So we
that,
talk about it.
if you agree to that, then I will reach out to town council.
Are you sure that that's a no?
It's the question I'm gonna be asking and the answers are not exactly attorney-client privilege, they're just, I'm asking her generally, because I don't know, because it's very clear to me if you're talking litigation strategy, if you're talking purpose 1,
Which is
I don't
personal
know.
character, you don't know if there's a
So-
S3 on that.
I'll motion to accept this request to use legal counsel.
Second,
I'll vote yes,
yes.
and so it's approved. And because I just don't know, and this
No,
is something
I'd
I've
rather
always
be
wondered
safe.
about. There was a meeting back in May of 2021, and we went into executive session, I think purpose one. And we released those minutes, and I didn't know if we should, and I've never really fully understood. We've always said it's important to regularly review approved executive, first of all, you have to approve executive session minutes in the
Even if you
same
don't-
time frame as
Right.
regular minutes.
Even if you don't release them.
Yes, and then releasing them is a different story, you're supposed to periodically review for release, but there's not so much guidance on when to release them, other than as long as the legal purpose that you entered executive session is still valid. But that's what I'm asking on that about, is
Okay.
at what point do you release these kinds of executive session
Right.
minutes, if ever, I don't know.
Okay, then, and you should ask about the attachments as well.
Yeah, well, Melissa
Should
kinda
any
got
of
an
the
answer on the
attachments-
attachments,
oh,
where if
okay.
you release the minutes,
You
the
release the
minutes the attachments are public.
Right, my argument to you was that they really weren't used in the meeting.
Yeah, so we've come across another vague part of open meeting law, which is that there's some discretion as to what is an attachment to a meeting minutes. The only thing that like needs to be an attachment to a meeting minutes is if we reference it and talk about it and quote it kind of during a meeting. So in this meeting, we talked about the treasurer contract and we approved the treasurer contract, so that's absolutely, there's a gray area, kind of, as to what exactly is a document used in a meeting. If you
Right.
think about that, you may come across like certain things even from this meeting, I'm trying to remember what we talked about, but we talked with Sophia about our vacation policy and time off policy. Is that a document used in the meeting? Not
We
really.
referred to it, but we didn't actually use
Yeah.
it, nobody read it.
So it's something to think about, but I will reach out to her with that first question, with what I approved about releasing executive session minutes and when to do it. Are there any comments and questions from the public? Everybody not, motion to adjourn,
Second,
yes,
yes,
meeting adjourned.
haha.